Good afternoon to some. Good evening, probably to some also. Welcome, everyone. We will give everyone a couple of minutes to start to trickle in. For anyone who is joining or has joined us, feel free to drop in the chat where you're from, questions that you have, what's top of mind. We're probably going to cover it all, but excited to hear from y'all. We got some collectively in the house. Yeah, some good support. Love that. AEG.
Yeah.
Amazing. TBA, welcome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll give folks a couple of minutes before we get started. We'll start in just a moment or so, but welcome to everyone. Feel free throughout to maybe drop any questions that you have. We'll cover a lot in terms of measurement practices today, and then we will have a Q&A session toward the end for about 15 minutes. So if you have any kind of burning, pressing questions for Fabian, Mar, for myself, you can hold on to those until we get into that Q&A. I see a lot of essentially like agencies, but what areas, what states and cities, where do we have everyone dialing in from? In Kenya, amazing. NYC, we got some San Diego, LA. Yeah, we're all over the map. I love to see it. Amazing. LA in the house. I was just in LA last week. And Lisbon, yes. Okay.
That's me.
Go ahead and jump in. We're just about 2 minutes after the hour. So welcome today to our webinar, Creator IQ's overview of impressions to impact. So we're going to talk about best practices for creator marketing measurement. I'm Jameer Milligan. I am Senior Strategic Insights Manager here. I'm joined by Fabian Vossen and Mar Peon from Collectively and Benefit Global, respectively. And I'm really excited to chat today. Recently, Creator IQ has hosted our city tours in New York City and Los Angeles, our Connect Europe event. And there's been so much conversation around best practices, right? Everyone's doing measurement in a lot of different ways, but really, what are the best ways that brands should be measuring when it comes to creator marketing programs? So we're going to discuss a bit today. Throughout the session, we'll start with these findings. This first one comes from our market research along with Creator IQ's State of Creator Marketing report. But we found that engagement has really replaced conversion as the #1 metric to prove out value for creator marketing in 2024, so as of last year. And so with that brings a question. When it comes to measuring the impact and the efficacy of creator marketing for your programs, what are the most important KPIs that you're looking at from both a brand and maybe an agency perspective as well? And either feel free to kick
in. I can start with this one if you want. I guess when we look at KPIs in general, before we look at KPIs, we really establish what the objective of the campaign is. We're trying to leverage creators across the whole funnel. So when we have a big product launch or a big awareness objective, we still really look at reach and views as KPIs to make this to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And we also adapt the choice of creators with that focus in mind. So this is the moments where we would tap into those, your powerhouses and also run those dedicated tactics for powerhouses. And while we go more towards consideration or conversion, then obviously engagement is a big KPI that we look at, but also more and more at sentiment. Brand lift, can go all the ways to sales when it's an affiliate tactic. So, and then the choices of creator are also adapted to this objective. So really it depends a lot more on the objective. And then we have a whole pool of KPIs that we can play with to kind of make sure that the campaign and the creator choice really delivered on those KPIs that we set.
Love that.
Beautifully said. I think from an agency's perspective, over the past several years, I think everyone's felt short form video really has become such a dominating force across social. So, thinking about awareness metrics, we are really zoomed in on things like average views and view rate. They, I think, just really help us really understand the larger impact that creator content is driving when it comes to awareness. So I always say, like, if no one saw the content, it doesn't matter what the engagement was because, it's almost like it didn't happen. So first and foremost, regardless of the objective, we're always going to look at those metrics, and whether or not they're like the core priority, we still really want to have a good handle on how they played out. And then of course metrics like engagement rate and sentiment are really important to us. So as I'm sure you can imagine, not every brand gets love in the comments on their social channels. So creator content can really be this amazing bright spot and unlock a lot of insight around how messaging is resonating. If the brands are really meeting the needs of the consumer, there's a lot of, I think, rich insight we can kind of derive from really parsing those comments and looking for the relevancy for the brand and the sentiment and kind of what messages are really coming through. And then, of course, we also measure click behavior. Like in a perfect world, everything has UTM parameters attached, and we're tracking it via Bitly or some kind of third-party retailer measurement solution. But I think with the knowledge in mind that it's really kind of like a last click view, snapshot in time, and that's not really the end all be all of kind of understanding success and impact of the campaign. So I think always looking at those things, and then the priorities really shift depending on the objective, to Fabian's point.
Amazing. I love that. And there's a really good segue or kind of foreshadowing into our next point. You mentioned it's not the end all be all, right? So some brands look at it like it's awareness or conversion. Like these two things are fighting against each other when they're really in relationship with each other, right? They can speak to each other very well. So I'd love to hear, how does your approach kind of shift depending on the campaign that you're running or the type of campaign that you're running when it comes to awareness versus conversion?
I can chime in here. So I think building on some of the things we were talking about in the last question, for each program or campaign we're running, we really love to build out measurement frameworks. And what that allows us to do is really spell it very clearly. Here's the objective of what we're trying to achieve, and here's how we'll measure the success to which we've achieved that. So I think we're consistently going to be tracking and measuring all the same metrics, but like what gets placed in that priority spot does shift. And we'll also adjust our benchmarks accordingly. So for example, if we're running in a campaign that's really focused on awareness, we shouldn't and wouldn't expect the conversion behavior to be the absolute best, because that's not what we're optimizing for and what we're designing our strategy for. So I think it's less common for, I would say, a single strategy to be able to land perfect performance across all KPIs at the same time, which I think is what makes the strategy aspect of creative marketing so fun and dynamic. Like you kind of have to design your tracks that are focused on each specific lane, and then set your expectations and measurement accordingly. So there's, I guess, in other words, there's not really like a silver bullet approach. It really is about kind of customizing for what you're hoping to achieve, and then kind of curating your expectations accordingly on the measurement side too.
Yeah, and I think from our side, maybe it's less about how we found. I'm going to answer it in a way where it's less about approaching the measurement across campaigns, but more also across time in general, especially when we work with creators. I think there's something that we really take into consideration when we work with creators on the contribution over time, right? So it's not just like their performance on a specific campaign and on those awareness and conversion metrics, but also like how much brand mentions or brand love do they give us outside of those specific campaign moments, right? So there is this kind of relationship building with creators, which has been at the core of Benefit's strategy with creators for years. And so we also want creators to talk about us outside of those peak campaigns where we measure, specific awareness, conversion, or all those KPIs that you can have. So making sure, like, if you have creators that only mention you and that you only measure the content when they mention you, when it's a paid or a specific campaign, I'm not sure it's a very good sign. They should also continue to measure you, to mention you more from an earned perspective. So how much also of the campaigns, the specific campaigns that we did with them, generated then this earned coverage, increased that brand love that they have with Benefit, is something that not across campaigns only, but across time, even when there is a slot where we don't have specific engagements with them, that really matters to us. So we kind of look at that measure over time a lot too.
I love that. Yeah, Fabian, I think you're speaking to kind of the origin and the purpose of the industry, right? As it began, was really to get creators to speak about you in the organic way. And so many of the brands that I work with, especially for their paid partners, they do separately track, like, what's that bonus content, right? Outside of what we're paying them for, what are we getting, outside of that, right? That's really a true measurement of their loyalty. And then Mayor, quickly just to touch on a point that I love that you mentioned, essentially there is no template, right? Many times brands will say to me as well, how do we achieve success? And it's like, well, what does success look like to you, right? What are we trying to achieve? And then we can best define a path to success for that. But there is just no, like, here's a win, but it can be in so many different categories. So I love that you called it out. Let's talk about benchmarking, right? How do we define what good looks like, right? And so we'll talk a bit about our benchmarks calculator in a bit. There'll be a link to that towards the end of the webinar. But how do you all define, industry standards, kind of looking at competitive data? How do you define a benchmark for your success and how it aligns with or compares to the success of competitors?
I think there are two different levels here for us. But first, I want to say we at Benefit, at least, we're distributed in over 30 markets. So we have a dedicated team in each market that is doing an amazing job by managing influencer relations and bringing our brand to life through those creators. So it's really important when we measure success that we have market-specific data, like what applies to France doesn't apply to the US, doesn't apply to Australia. So making sure that we have a benchmark that is relevant for that specific region for us is really important, because for the market to really action on. So to the two-level things, I think there is one level where it's really at a brand level. How do we perform globally, not globally, or market specifically, in terms of, how many creators we partner with, etc., which is really important. And for that, I think consistency is also really important, that we kind of look at the same metrics and the methodology is the same quarter over quarter, or month over month. And then we also benchmark ourselves at a creator level. Like, we see that creators in general, sometimes a creator is doing really well talking about a specific product or a specific brand, really engages with their community. The community loves the content, and so it kind of gains traction with their specific audience. But then for Benefit, no. Or for another brand, no. So it's really important also when we look at competitive data to look at it at a kind of more holistic level. How are we doing industry-wise? But how, when we pick a specific creator, how does her or his community really engage with the type of content, and would it work for us as well, instead of just it works for them, so it's going to work for us. Sometimes it's not the case. So there is those two levels that we look at as well.
Mm-hmm. On the collectively side, I would say we have a pretty rigorous benchmarking approach, and we're lucky in that we just get so much data in terms of, we have a really kind of varied client community. So on a regular basis, we aggregate all of our performance data from all of the campaigns that we're partnering with brands on, and we'll segment that data similar to kind of even how you talk about segmenting the data by different markets. We also apply that lens, but we will also kind of dig into the different brand verticals we're working within. So kind of tagging data and making sure it's organized in a way where we can kind of understand benchmarks for food versus wellness versus tech brands. And then we also will really cut the data a couple different ways when it comes to creators. So creator size is always something we want to account for, because we see that particularly for engagement rate, the size of a creator has a pretty significant impact on what they typically achieve with that metric. And then we'll also look at creator types. And this is, I think, like when we get into kind of like these like niche cohorts of creator that, like speak about entrepreneurship or financial services, like they perform widely or very differently from someone who's creating content about beauty or fashion. So I think that's another filter we really like to look at. And then channel, what type of content they're creating, et cetera. So that's just kind of like our how we look at our broad data set and kind of develop cuts. And then when we're curating benchmarks for a brand we're partnering with, we'll look at their historical data and then also combine it with how their competitors are performing. And that really allows us to set benchmarks that I always like to say, like, we want to be realistic and competitive at the same time. So what's realistic for how the brand is performing today or how they've been performing, and then what should our goal be based on how we know we want to optimize their strategies and really kind of continue to drive performance for them. So and I'll just give one plug for Creator IQ's tool, the Creator IQ's competitive insights tool. This has been something that kind of like zooming out from the campaign level, when brands are really interested in understanding their footprint in the market, that's been a really helpful tool for us to help brands understand what is the total EMV they're driving in the creator landscape. So like putting kind of view rate and engagement rate benchmarks aside, like what is their share of voice on social in comparison to other brands that might be in their competitive landscape. So that's just another way that we kind of think about benchmarking and performance, especially when it comes to brands who are investing really significantly and really want to keep a close eye on their competitors and how they're performing.
Well, thank you for that plug. Competitive insights is really like my bread and butter. It's what I'm doing all day, every day, and living in. So totally with you there. I think one of the really, really important parts when looking at competitive insights you mentioned is being realistic, right? So some of the top brands, just a quick example in skincare, are Summer Fridays, Rhode. They lean a little bit more cosmetics, right? They lean a little bit more into the color cosmetic side. So for some skincare brands, they're like an unattainable sort of benchmark to use, right? Because you're really a clean skincare brand, or you might be focused on Korean skincare, et cetera, not the makeup space. So I think being fair with yourself, right, and allowing yourself to achieve those goals rather than just looking at like who has the highest number is really, really important when setting that benchmark.
Okay.
A couple of other questions. So one other finding was that engagement is the number one metric that marketers are using to justify creator marketing decisions. So what metrics do you use to measure success? What are the most important to prove really to your leaders? I think as we were discussing this, Fabian, I think it's as your program matures, right? Some of those metrics have changed. So how has that shifted over time as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I think back to my leadership team, often you would be surprised how it's not the most quantifiable metrics. Of course, everyone loves a huge, a number of views or great CPM. So all those things, love it. It's great. But I think what they're the most what they get the most excited about often is what matters the most to them is when you see creators that really show brand love or really tell a story about our brand or benefit in general, when it really means something. So we've had some examples on the past where creators share a very moving, a beautiful story of how they came into a brow bar. You know, we have those brow bars where you sit in a chair, you have an esthetician in front of you, she's doing your brows for about 15-20 minutes, and you talk to her, and it's like going to your hairdresser almost. You know, you have your, and so they create those real relationships with those estheticians. And we've had a few examples where we have videos where they really talk about their estheticians in store, where they're like, I love her, she's so great, like we shared so much. So it's kind of those it almost goes beyond pure beauty, I would say, or how they use a brow product. They suddenly gives them brows when they plugged them 20 years ago and they have zero brows, and now it gives them brows again. And it's just, they say often it's those little stories that tie in the product, but that actually gives much more to us as a brand than just a number of views. It's kind of this real tapping into who we are as a brand. You know, we want to put a smile on women's faces. We want to bring joy. So it's kind of this additional real brand love that creators show us, that very often or always is earned or organic, and that really where they see the true value of creators of sharing their stories. That is not just which is also great to get ready with me, a tutorial, whatever, to show like the benefits of our products. But you know, having something that means much more to us as a brand, that is much deeper anchored in our core values. That I think those, when our leadership sees those videos, I think it shows the impact of creators and how they can share the story way more than just a great CPM. In a way, it sticks with them way more.
That's lovely. I feel like there's a lot of things tied up in that around like authenticity and people like feeling emotions and brands making you feel things.
Yeah.
We've had experiences where we've like presenting a great report after a campaign, and the slide that gets people most excited is just like verbatim quotes of people who saw the content and were like dying to comment and talk about
exactly
like how the brand is a part of their life. And I think it's something you can, you know, like outside of just a number, it's something that you can really feel and process and understand as a marketer. So that said,
of course, don't want to take away from the measurement.
from the measurement side of things, I think all of that is, of course, is really like beautiful and important. And there are also a lot of other things that we really like to point to. And I think a lot of these things that I'll mention, I think, you know, kind of the different ways brands are really kind of thinking about and measuring creator content, just point to the way that the industry has really matured over the past 5 years. So I think I think what we felt is that brands are really understanding that they need to kind of think about creator content similarly as they do to a lot of their traditional marketing channels. So applying a lot of those marketing analytics best practices. So a lot of the stuff we do today is really focused around brand lift studies and understanding how creator content is performing in brand lift studies and really driving incremental success for our brands. So improving awareness, improving memorability, or shifting perception. And then of course, like hopefully increasing the likelihood that user is going to convert. So we work with several different study vendors to, I think, really just like understand the power of that creative in terms of how it's influencing users. Another thing that we see a lot of brands doing is ensuring that creator performance data is incorporated in their MMM. So I think that has been really crucial in providing an understanding of to what degree creator content is moving the needle in terms of ROI. And then the last thing I'll mention, and this is, you know, because I'm a little bit biased because I also oversee the agency's paid social team, but looking at paid social data and really understanding how creator content is performing in comparison to maybe like more traditional content or brand produced assets. So I would say most of the time the brands and on our site as well, we see that creator content is driving stronger ROAS, and it's just going to perform better in that paid media channel. So those, you know, kind of like looking at brand lift studies, really understanding MMM impact, And then, of course, kind of understanding how creator content performs outside of just that organic social performance lens. All those things can kind of be like triangulated to really understand how this kind of like halo effect emerges that you're maybe not going to just see in that like raw, it got 1 million views number. It's really like kind of much larger than that. And those things really help to tell that story.
I love that tie-in. There's actually data on use of creator content in digital ads in our State of Creator Marketing report, which is the data that we use for this webinar. So fantastic backup there. One last note on leadership. I always ask new clients when I meet them, and I'll share this with everyone here. What makes your leadership team smile, right? If you can think about those things that kind of raise that eyebrow or make them feel really good, those are the things to continue to lean into. We have more questions here. So I would love to hear just about a success story. Tell me about a campaign that really exceeded your expectations. What did you learn from that campaign? And then what were really some of those success factors in terms of KPIs that drove success?
Yeah, I can start here. Maybe this is, as you can see, it's our Benetint. So we went viral on TikTok with this product, which is an OG Benefit lip and cheek tint. And so basically, really what did I learn the most about this campaign is that it's as important to be reactive and on the pulse than to be proactive, actually. Because with creators, often you can try to get viral on TikTok. You can try to put all the ingredients in your recipe to make, this video blow up, become viral, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, it's the creators that are starting the trend, that are creating the trend. And so I think what is really important is to, from the measurement perspective, be on the pulse, see what has an unusual spike of views, of engagements, of positive comments or whatever, and then amplify this. I think this is something that, we're always trying to be the initiator of the big number of views of the spike. But actually, when you see the spike that is already a little there, I think there are a million ways to amplify it, on earned, paid, owned, organic, whatever you. So it's, I think that this is really for me one of the key learnings of this is that often great campaigns are also not just created by us, but by creators, and that it's our job to identify them early and to amplify them with what you have. So I think this is a little bit more of a reversed way to looking at things maybe, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there to see what the creators are actually creating, what the audience is actually organically interested in, and pushing forward with their likes, their shares, their positive comments, their views, etc. And then it's our job as brands to amplify it and to identify what works to serve more of it, amplify it to viewers.
I love that. My example, it's not necessarily specific to a single campaign that I was a part of, but we work with a really fantastic financial services brand. And I always like to talk about them because whenever I tell people I work in creator marketing, like it's the last, kind of like brand vertical they're expecting me to talk about, like financial services. Everyone's like, oh, okay. But we have a really fantastic client that we've been working with for several years now. And I think they've just embraced creator marketing in this way that truly sets them apart from like any of their competitors. And, like also just like kind of like leading brands in a really impressive way. So of course, like they're consistently working with creators in an organic capacity to create content for their social channels. But they've also integrated so many different types of programming to their marketing strategy. So a couple things that I think that they stand out to me and I think are really special. One is that they engage creators to promote their products outside of just the traditional social media platforms. So we're always testing new platforms with them and trying new mediums, whether it's webinars, podcasts, dipping a toe into Substack and kind of understanding what the response could be like there. So they're just always game to try new things and really understand what could work there for them. They also have really, in partnership with us, developed a thoughtful event strategy that involves not only just like opportunities for them to kind of meet with creators and talk about the brand, but gives like meaningful opportunities to creators. So like opportunities to be a part of panels or kind of like speakerships where they're hosting events for kind of larger communities. So I think I think to your point, Fabian, like they really value the creator relationship in a way that feels authentic and special. And then I think they also just understand that creator assets perform really well. So they're going to perform well organically, they perform well on paid social, and because of that, they've tested them in programmatic media buys and in TV spots, and they've done out-of-home activations where like you're walking down the street and you see like a huge billboard of your favorite creator promoting their product. So I think just really kind of the theme of working with them has been they're down to test and learn, and they want to double down on what's working, and they're not afraid to try new things. And I think not only has that allowed them to really stand out, but you know, from an agency perspective, it makes such a fun client because they you know, are excited when we bring them new ideas and are always kind of trying to move the needle with new ways of working with creators.
That. We just talked about a lot of kind of experimental things. And then we'll also, just on our last question, we always like to go into a little bit of a crystal ball and think about the future of where things are going. So what metrics would you be interested in getting your hands on? Where do you think this space is headed? And feel free to be like unrealistic in this case, right? Like if you could have any metric that you'd like to have, what do you think is happening out there?
Yeah, well, I can.
Yeah, start. Well, I'm still thinking about my answer here.
Look at your crystal ball. So I think so I can speak to a couple of fun things we're testing on the Collectively side. So with our parent company, the Brand Tech Group, we are working with, they have a proprietary share of model platform. And what that platform really does, it allows brands to understand how they're perceived by the top LLMs. So almost like kind of social listening, but instead of social, they're looking at the LLMs to understand what are the brand's strengths in those models, what are the weaknesses, and you know, kind of just like a full analysis of how their brand's showing up relative to their competitors. It's really fascinating and kind of terrifying, as you can imagine. So I think with our testing, what we're focused on is how can creator content influence or complement a brand's perception in the LLMs as a way to either like shift away from a less desirable perception or double down with things that they want to like kind of grow and continue to kind of like show up as. So we're really just kind of in the testing phase with this. And the idea is like, hopefully we can get an understanding of how creators can really impact that sphere, because I think everyone is continuing to kind of read everywhere, headlines everywhere, that LLMs are just playing an increasing role in how consumers are learning about brands and also making purchase decisions. So yeah, we'll be excited to report back on how these tests go, but I think it's a really exciting application of how creators will continue to just like influence different places in which humans are kind of like congregating and getting information about how they should kind of spend their money with brands. So it's exciting.
That's extremely exciting. Fabian, anything on your wish list?
Yeah, I mean, I think two on my wish list, and one maybe thought on where I think the space is heading, which is exciting and brings maybe a lot of additional metrics in. But the first one is, and I got maybe too inspired by the chat section, but a direct correlation to sales would be super helpful, would be amazing. I mean, I know there've been a few models that tried it where you have this average sales generator per creator, etc. But really tangible ways to find, to see like this creator event led to that many sales is still we can try to figure out some ways, but it's obviously the correlation often is less there versus other tactics or marketing levers that we have. So I think that would be amazing. The second one, what I would love to have, again, crystal ball here, but like would be like a predictor of what's going to work and not work. We do so much test and learn, and obviously it helps you guide a little bit where you're going, but we're still trying to figure out what is that secret sauce that really will make content go viral, will kind of really interest people, who is the creator that would be the perfect fit for our brand, for that specific launch, for that specific. So if we would have just a generator or predictor being like, contract her with this product in this format on this platform, boom, with this type of narrative, something like this, which obviously is what we're, it's just a crystal ball again, one can dream, but I think that is something that that would be amazing. And last but not least, where I think the space is heading, I think what is fascinating and fun, and also what I see more and more of, is like everyone is a creator. I feel like the space today, it's so participatory, can you say? Like, you know, everyone, like on TikTok, everyone's a creator. On YouTube, you have all those features that kind of ask you to participate, to build this community, these forums, this, etc. So it's just kind of, it's going to be exciting to see when it's not just going to be like, those are your 5 powerhouses, those are your 5 mids. It's just everyone is part of it. So I think there is something about this kind of community feel where it's not going to be this segmented pool of creators that needs to be activated, but a micro or someone that has 5,000 followers can be as impactful as a powerhouse in a way, just because it's what really people are interested in, that gain traction and views. So I think there's something about that it's very powerful and exciting.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, well, coming back to also engagement, I think the one thing I'd love to see is, as we move into more kind of short form video, I'd love to see like a total hours watched, right, from some creators, or understanding like who comes back to a creator. I have a gym creator that since I started working out, I go back and like do my same routine, but I wonder how many times I've gone back to that same video. But I think that those are the kinds of metrics that kind of allow us to more deeply understand the engagements. And then to your point, Fabian, we can start to predict what's going to work, right? If we know what people are more consistently kind of showing loyalty to as it relates to content.
Yeah.
Well, just before we jump into our Q&A, we'll give a quick plug to our global benchmarking calculator, which we announced just last month at our Connect Europe event. But this is a new tool. This is available through our resources segment. I believe we'll also be sharing this in the chat. But you can gauge the performance of your creator marketing program with this tool. So these benchmarks differ across industries. We have 28 different industries included, all of our creator tiers from powerhouse down to micro. And then there are 18 different regions that are included, as well as all the major social platforms. So feel free to kind of play around with this calculator and feel free to share any thoughts on it. I think it really will allow you to define, are we in a good place? Do we have some room to grow? And this is years of creator marketing data pulled together to set these benchmarks across multiple industries. Let's open up to questions. I already see a few in the chat, so let me jump up to the top. I think we did talk about linking to sales a little bit. I'll jump to the next one. So in building an amplification, are we doing that? Sorry, I'm just reading this in real time right now. So understanding, the negotiating power essentially with like content that has already been published versus, content that you might work with the creator to create or publish. So when we talk about amplification, is that something that you align on beforehand, or is that something that you try to link in after the fact?
I think it can be both. It can be, to the specific example that I was talking about, for like when you see something unusual trend or peak, or a certain KPI just unusually being high. I think the amplification in that case often comes after, because you were surprised by it as much as everyone else. But I think there are a million other ways. I know that what you're saying by the you have less negotiating power after, but there are a million other ways to amplify. That doesn't necessarily just mean paying to put dollars behind a specific video. It could be a cent for that specific product that got like an unusual spike, or it could be building another product of the collection or something like that, or working with your retailers to amplify it even more. Like there are a lot of different ways to amplify when you see that a specific product or a specific trend gained traction. So if you see like one of your products gaining traction in a specific way, you can leverage that specific way of using the product in a lot of different ways. So you can be kind of creative on what this amplification, talking beauty specific, but what the amplification looks like. And sometimes it's upfront. Of course, if you have a creator that is really good at doing a certain thing in a product category, then yes, then we build it in from the get-go. I hope this answered your question.
I'll pose another one that's in here. How do you measure organic content mentions outside of those paid campaigns?
Yeah. So I'm a big, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Creator IQ's competitive insights tool. What that allows you to do is really kind of understand total brand mentions coming from creator content. So you're not just necessarily zooming in on a campaign that you're executing where like this influencer using this hashtag, this time frame. It is really kind of giving you a pulse of who's talking about you, and it might be people that you know about, it might be people that you don't. So tools like Creator IQs offers the ability to really kind of track your influencer footprint and understand organic mentions.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll actually add in here, if you want to maybe add a little more color, just how are we analyzing competitor data, and how do we essentially kind of create a report on what's winning in their creative strategy?
Yeah. So we do a lot of competitor analysis on the collectively side. And typically what we're doing is we're kind of unpacking the different elements that a competitor might be using. So what channels are they really winning on? Are they kind of splitting their budgets 50-50, does it look like? Are they going all in on TikTok? So really understanding channel is always really important for us. We'll also look at the size of creator that a brand might be working with. So, I think brands are kind of really all over the map. Some lean into micro creators and really kind of benefit from usually like the more affordable rates those creators will work with. Whereas others are like, no, I need to have like the coolest, largest people on TikTok today, and I don't want to work with anyone else. So I think that helps us understand, okay, like how is this competitor really kind of putting themselves on social when it comes to channel and then influencer tier. And then we also really like to kind of dig into the creative strategy. So a lot of brands are, kind of depending on the vertical and the brand ecosystem, some brands might be more prescriptive on what they're asking creators to do and giving them a really specific brief that they have to execute. And you see that, you kind of like start to piece it together when you watch multiple pieces of content, like, oh, okay, like that's what they told them to do. And other brands are kind of go that route of more of an open brief, like kind of, I think what you were describing earlier is letting the creator create content based on what they know is going to perform with their audience. So those are things that we typically like to look at. And, we break things out by the data associated with those levers. And it just gives us an understanding of like, okay, how are they choosing to kind of set themselves apart on social? And then as like your own brand, you can decide whether you want to kind of mirror some of those things or do something totally different. But I think just understanding like, okay, what are some of the levers that people are pulling in my category first is a good kind of grounding principle, and then you can kind of build your strategy from there.
Love that. Amazing. In our last minute, I'm going to answer a quick question from Tessa here, which was, which exact engagement metric are you using to report on success? Is it engagement? Is it EMV? Is it engagement rate? I will say I think it's all of them right together. So for instance, EMV, which looks at engagements overall, that's our, at least on the Creator IQ side, proprietary metric that we're leveraging. It's really important to also look at impressions side by side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw a lift in engagement, but did we also see a lift in number of eyes? If we saw a lift in engagement and a drop in number of eyes, it actually tells us that this content is really engaging. So I think that it's really important to look at metrics side by side, and it's great to have a true kind of North Star, and EMV is a fantastic one for that, for engagement, but it's also really important to provide a clear lens, right? How did we perform side by side when we look at overall engagements or with our reach growth as well? So it's kind of a bundle of everything.
Yeah.
That brings us right to our time. Thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you, Fabian. Thank you, Mayor, for the conversation and all of your fantastic insights. Thank you for everyone who provided some questions in the chat. And you'll receive the recording to this. We'll also share the link to our global benchmarks calculator, which was recently released.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.